The stars burned cold and endless, like silent watchers of forgotten wars. For 3,000 years, humanity had drifted through space, broken and scattered, like dust carried by the cosmic wind. They had lost their world, the one place they once called home, torn away from them by an enemy that most only remembered as shadows in half-forgotten tales. Generations were born, lived, and died among metal walls and hollow ships, never setting foot on soil, never feeling the warmth of a true sun. To many, Earth was a myth, a story told to children to give them hope. But for others, Earth was not a dream. It was a promise. In the dark silence between galaxies, the fleet waited. Thousands of ships, some massive like floating cities, some small and sharp like knives, hung together in a formation that looked fragile against the infinity of space. Yet inside those ships, humanity's blood beat strong, hearts burning with an anger that had not faded through the centuries. They were tired of running. They were tired of surviving in borrowed places. They wanted what was stolen. Commander Alric stood at the center of the flagship, his hands folded behind his back, his eyes fixed on the holographic display. He was not young, though no one really aged the same in the void anymore. His hair was silver, his skin marked with the faint scars of battles fought in forgotten star systems. But his eyes carried the fire of a man who had never given up. Before him, glowing in the projection, was the image of Earth. Not the Earth of blue oceans and green forests, but Earth as it was now. A broken jewel wrapped in chains of alien machinery, its skies filled with watchtowers that did not belong, its surface scarred by centuries of occupation. 3,000 years, Alric whispered, his voice low, almost lost in the hum of the command deck. 3,000 years we waited for this moment. Behind him, the crew stood in silence. Some were young, born in the fleet with no memory of a planet under their feet. Others were old enough to remember stories from their grandparents, stories of fields of wheat, of oceans that smelled of salt, of skies unbroken by metal. For all of them, this mission was not just war. It was homecoming. Outside the flagship's windows, the stars shifted as the fleet aligned. The enemy did not know yet. The enemy believed humanity broken forever, scattered into silence. They had not seen the hidden colonies, the secret alliances, the stolen technology shaped into weapons sharper than anything humanity once had. For centuries, the exiles had waited in the shadows, learning, preparing, building an army that carried not just steel, but vengeance. The silence broke when the communications officer spoke. "Commander, the scouts report enemy patrols near the outer defenses. Automated platforms. No living crew. Just machines." Alric nodded. "Good. Machines can be broken." The officer hesitated. "But sir, once we strike, they will know we are here. There will be no turning back." The words hung in the air. Everyone knew what they meant. Once they began, there would be no escape. Either they would reclaim Earth, or they would die in the attempt. There was no other path. Alric turned slowly, looking at his crew. He saw fear, yes, but he also saw fire. He saw people who had carried the weight of exile too long, people ready to carve their names back into history. "We have lived as ghosts," he said, his voice rising. "We have wandered among the stars with no home, no ground to bury our dead, no sky that belongs to us. Tonight, that ends. Tonight, humanity stops hiding." The words struck like sparks in the air. The crew straightened. Eyes hardened. Hands tightened over controls. The first engines roared to life, vibrations running through the metal floor. The fleet stirred, like a giant waking from a long sleep. Weapons charged, shields rose, signals whispered across the void. For the first time in 3,000 years, humanity's war machine was alive. But even as the fire lit inside the ships, a shadow lingered. The enemy was not weak. They had ruled Earth for longer than humanity had ever existed as a spacefaring people. Their technology was older, their reach longer, their armies countless. No one knew what waited inside those broken skies. Alric did not allow doubt to reach his voice. "Begin the approach," he ordered. Slowly, like a tide pulled by unseen gravity, the fleet moved forward. Stars slid behind them, and Earth grew larger in the display. The planet turned, its surface hidden under clouds and strange lights that flickered with alien power. The crew stared in silence. For some, it was the first time seeing Earth with their own eyes. For others, it was the proof that the old stories were true. And for all, it was the reminder of why they had come. "Do you feel it?" Alric said softly. "She remembers us. She has waited for us." Outside, the patrol platforms detected movement. Lights flickered. Silent machines began to turn. The first alarm rang through the enemy network. And in that moment, humanity struck its first blow in 3,000 years. The silence of space shattered when the first patrol machine detected movement. Its sensors blinked red, and cold metal claws turned toward the intruders. For thousands of years, these machines had guarded Earth, waiting for threats that never came. Now, after centuries of silence, they found themselves staring at a storm they had never expected. Dozens of defense platforms floated in orbit, like rusted watchtowers chained to the planet. Some were massive, built long ago by alien hands, their surfaces covered in strange glyphs and dark cannons. Others were smaller, newer, and faster, built by machines without faces. All of them woke at once. The fleet slowed but did not stop. Humanity had lived in fear long enough. Now they carried fire in their hearts. "Enemy defenses are powering up," the tactical officer reported. "They are locking onto us." Alric's eyes narrowed. "Then we strike first." The order traveled like lightning through the fleet. Weapons opened, glowing lines of energy cutting through the void. Human cannons, forged in secret colonies, roared for the first time. Missiles streaked across the dark, breaking apart into swarms of smaller warheads. The first alien platform exploded before it could fire. Its body cracked in silence, flames bursting outward, a giant broken flower blooming in space. The crew cheered, but the celebration was short. More platforms turned. Bright lances of alien energy cut across the battlefield. One of the smaller human ships, a swift scout frigate, was caught in the beam. For a moment, it glowed like a star, then broke apart into fragments that spun into the endless black. The cheers died. Silence filled the decks again, heavy and sharp. Alric did not flinch. His voice cut through the tension like steel. "Remember why we are here. No sacrifice will be wasted. Press the attack." The fleet surged forward. Squadrons of fighters poured out, small ships darting between beams of light, weaving through the chaos like angry insects. They carried torpedoes designed to pierce armor, weapons shaped from stolen alien cores. One by one, the fighters struck, and one by one, enemy platforms fell in burning silence. But the machines did not retreat. They fought with cold patience, never showing fear, never showing doubt. A massive cannon fired from one of the largest stations, its beam wide enough to cut through several ships at once. 3 human cruisers were caught, their shields burning red before failing. In seconds, the cruisers turned into graves of twisted metal. On the flagship, alarms screamed. Sparks rained from the ceiling as a glancing shot shook the hull. Crew members struggled to keep control, hands moving fast over controls, sweat shining on their faces. "We can't take much more of this," the officer said. Alric's voice stayed calm. "Then we break them faster." The flagship's main weapon charged. A deep hum filled the deck, the sound of stored power building to something unstoppable. On the display, a glowing orb of energy grew brighter and brighter, until it was almost painful to look at. "Target their largest cannon," Alric ordered. The weapon fired. A burning wave of light shot forward, crossing the distance in seconds. When it struck, the alien platform cracked apart like glass, fire spilling from its broken heart. The giant cannon vanished, torn into shards that scattered into the dark. A cheer rose again, stronger this time. The enemy had lost its largest weapon. But victory was still far away. More platforms continued to awaken, their weapons filling the void with deadly fire. It was not just machines now. Smaller alien ships, patrol craft, began to launch from hidden bays. Their sleek shapes darted through the battlefield, faster than human fighters, their weapons sharp and merciless. The first clash between fighters and patrol craft turned space into chaos. Explosions bloomed in every direction, ships twisting and spinning, trails of fire marking the last breaths of pilots who never saw home. One young pilot, Juno, weaved her fighter through the chaos, her hands tight on the controls. She had never seen Earth before this day, never touched soil, but her blood burned with the same hunger as the others. Her fighter spun around an alien patrol craft, torpedoes firing at close range. The enemy ship burst into shards behind her, but another beam of light cut across her wing. Her ship shuddered, warning lights flashing red. "Stay with me, Juno," her commander's voice said through the comms. "We need every fighter we can keep alive." Juno gritted her teeth, forcing her damaged ship to turn back toward the fight. The battle raged on. Every explosion lit the darkness, like stars being born and dying in the same breath. Humanity pushed forward, step by bloody step, closer to Earth. But the cost was heavy. Ships fell. Names were lost. Yet still, they did not stop. Finally, after what felt like hours, the last enemy platform exploded. Fire and debris scattered across orbit, drifting like broken bones. The patrol ships that survived fled back toward the planet, vanishing into the clouds. The battlefield grew quiet again, only the wreckage floating as a reminder of what had been lost. On the flagship, the crew sat in silence, exhausted but alive. Dozens of ships were gone. Hundreds of lives had been lost. Yet Earth was closer now, clear and waiting, her wounded face turning slowly under alien light. Alric looked at the planet, his eyes hard but steady. "The first wall has fallen," he said. "But this is only the beginning. They will not let us take her back so easily." And deep below the clouds, in the ruins of cities once human, the true enemy stirred for the first time in centuries. The fleet hung above Earth like a storm waiting to fall. The smoke of broken platforms still drifted in orbit, glowing faintly under the pale light of the planet. But the silence that followed the battle was heavy, and no one on the flagship believed it would last. The enemy had been stirred awake, and all knew it was only a matter of time before the real fight began. For the first time in 3,000 years, human eyes looked down upon their world. But what they saw was not the home remembered in stories. The surface of Earth was dark. Where oceans once glittered under the sun, black stains spread, as if the waters themselves had been poisoned. Vast networks of alien structures crawled across the continents, lines of metal and stone that pulsed with cold light, like veins on a corpse. Cities were there, but not human cities. Towers twisted into the sky at strange angles, glowing with symbols no one could read. Between them, endless pits opened, as if the ground itself had been hollowed out. Alric stood at the command deck, silent. His crew waited, their faces pale. For generations they had dreamed of Earth, green forests, blue skies, oceans alive with life. What lay before them now was a nightmare, a graveyard of a world. "Is this what they did to her?" one of the younger officers whispered. "They turned our home into this?" No one answered. Scouts were sent first, small dropships slipping through the clouds. Their descent was slow, cautious, every eye watching. As they broke through the atmosphere, their cameras showed more detail. The once bright skies were now gray and heavy, filled with drifting machines that scanned the air like predators. The land below was scarred with trenches, black rivers of machinery stretching toward the horizon. And yet, among the alien ruins, something remained. A cracked mountain range. The broken shell of a city still half-human in shape. The shattered bones of bridges that once carried cars and people across rivers. The ghosts of Earth were still there, buried under the enemy's mark. When the scouts reached the surface, the images grew worse. The ground was littered with ash. Towers of alien stone pierced through the ruins of human buildings, twisting them together as if the enemy had used the bones of humanity's cities to build their own. In some places, massive machines moved slowly, their bodies like walking fortresses, carving deep scars in the earth. In others, the ruins stood silent, watched only by the blinking eyes of drones that hovered above. But there was something stranger still. In the ruins of an old city, where broken skyscrapers leaned like dying giants, the scouts saw movement. Not machines, not drones. Figures. They were thin, their skin pale under the strange sky, their bodies covered with ragged cloth. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dark, as if touched by something unnatural. They moved slowly, without words, gathering around strange altars of alien stone. Some carried tools. Some carried nothing. But all of them looked broken, like prisoners who had forgotten what freedom was. Humans, the scout pilot whispered over the comms. The command deck fell silent. Are you sure? Alric asked. The pilot adjusted the feed. The images were clear enough. They were human, or at least they had been. Generations born under alien rule, molded by strange hands. Their faces were the faces of Earth's children, but their movements were empty, as if the soul had been drained from them. They left some alive, the pilot said quietly. They left them here, like this. The crew stared at the feed in silence. Some looked away. Others clenched their fists. For centuries, they had believed all of Earth's people gone. To find survivors like this, changed, enslaved, was worse than finding none at all. Alric's voice was steady, but his eyes burned. Then Earth has not forgotten us. Her children still remain. And we will not leave them in chains. The words filled the crew with fire again, but also fear. If humans still lived here, even in this broken form, then the enemy had allowed it for a reason. The aliens were not careless. They had shaped this world with purpose. The scouts did not remain long. Drones began to close in, their sharp bodies cutting through the air. The feed shook as the dropships lifted back into the clouds, chased by beams of light. One scout was struck, its image vanishing into static as it fell, burning, into the ruins below. The others escaped, racing back toward orbit. When they returned, their silence was louder than any battle. The images they carried were shown across the fleet. Every man and woman saw what had become of Earth. Every child of the stars saw what was waiting for them below. Some cried. Some whispered prayers. Others sharpened their anger into steel. Alric stood before them all. His voice carried through the fleet, firm as iron. This is our world. They tried to erase us. They tried to bury us under machines and shadows. But we are still here. And as long as one of us draws breath, Earth will rise again. The fleet answered with a roar of voices, echoing through the metal halls. But deep below, in the heart of the alien towers, something stirred. The enemy had not only guarded Earth, they had grown stronger here. And now, they knew their ancient foe had returned. The real war was only beginning. The landing craft shuddered as it broke through the thick clouds. Fire licked at the hull, the old atmosphere of Earth clawing at the ship like it wanted to tear it apart. For a moment, silence filled the cabin, each soldier strapped in, each breath heavy with fear and awe. No one alive had ever set foot on Earth. For them, this was more than a mission. This was a homecoming written in fire. Commander Alric stood at the front, hand gripping the rail, eyes steady. Around him, the soldiers sat ready, their armor dark, their weapons humming with silent power. Some were young, born in the fleet with no memory of dirt or sky. Others were older, scarred by battles in forgotten star systems. But all of them carried the same fire. This was their world, and they would fight for it. The craft broke free of the clouds, and the soldiers saw Earth for the first time. The sky was a dull gray, filled with floating drones that drifted like vultures. Below stretched a ruined city. Once, it might have been beautiful. Tall towers, wide streets, rivers cutting through stone. Now, it was broken, swallowed by alien growth. Strange black metal coiled through the ruins like roots, pulsing faintly with cold light. Towers leaned, half human, half alien, their bones twisted together. And through the empty streets, machines crawled on spidery legs, scanning, hunting. Touchdown in 60 seconds, the pilot called. No one spoke. The air inside the cabin was heavy, thick with tension. Each soldier checked their weapon one last time. The craft slammed into the cracked street, metal screaming as it landed. The doors burst open, and the soldiers poured out. For the first time in 3,000 years, human boots struck Earth's soil. It did not feel like home. The ground was blackened, cracked, covered in ash. The air was heavy, thin and strange, tasting faintly of metal. But beneath it, there was something familiar. The whisper of a breeze. The distant cry of birds, muted, broken, but real. For a heartbeat, some soldiers froze, stunned by the sound of life. "Move!" Alric shouted. The soldiers pushed forward, spreading across the street. Buildings rose around them, half buried in alien stone. Shadows flickered above as drones circled, their red eyes glowing. Then the first beam of light cut down from the sky. A soldier fell, his body burning before he hit the ground. The others dropped into cover, firing back. Bright bolts of energy tore into the drones, shattering them in bursts of fire. The ruined city erupted in chaos. The enemy had been waiting. From the alleys and broken towers, machines crawled into view. Tall, thin, their bodies sharp and angular, their faces nothing but blank masks. They moved in silence, weapons glowing on their arms. The soldiers fired, their shots tearing into the machines, but more came. For every one that fell, two more appeared. Alric's voice cut through the comms. "Hold the line. This is our soil. Do not give an inch." The soldiers fought hard. Explosions shook the streets. Fire lit the ruins. The air filled with the screams of men, the roar of weapons, the metallic screech of dying machines. Slowly, painfully, the humans pushed forward, step by bloody step. In the chaos, Juno, the young fighter pilot who had survived the orbital battle, now ran with the ground forces. She had never known Earth, never touched soil until now. Even under fire, she felt it. The ground under her boots. The wind in her hair. For her, that was enough to fight harder. She ducked under a collapsing wall, firing at a drone that screamed overhead, her shots burning it out of the sky. "Commander!" a soldier shouted. "They're trying to surround us." Alric turned, eyes narrowing. Through the smoke, he saw more machines pouring from the ruins, climbing walls, dropping from rooftops. The enemy wanted to trap them here, crush them before they could take even a foothold. "Forward!" he ordered. "Break their circle. If we fall back, we die." The soldiers surged, charging through the ruins, weapons blazing. The street shook with their advance. They cut through the machines with steel and fire, carving a path deeper into the city. And then, for the first time, they saw them. The survivors. A group of thin figures stood in the ruins, huddled together near a broken tower. Their eyes glowed faintly, their bodies weak and pale. They wore rags, their faces hollow, their movements slow. They looked more like shadows than people. But they were human. The soldiers froze. One of the survivors raised a hand, trembling, reaching out as if afraid they would vanish. His voice was cracked, broken, but the word he spoke was clear. "Brothers." For a moment, the battle fell away. The soldiers stared, their hearts caught in their throats. After 3,000 years, after exile and war, they had found their people again. But the moment did not last. The ground shook, and a sound filled the air. Deep, mechanical, like thunder rolling from the earth itself. From the shadows of the ruined towers, something massive stepped into view. It was no drone. No small machine. This one was a giant, its body towering above the buildings, its arms heavy with cannons, its eyes burning red. The soldiers turned, their weapons rising. Alric's voice was low, steady, unbroken. "We hold here. We hold for them. For Earth." The giant machine took its first step forward, and the ground itself seemed to tremble under its weight. The real fight for the surface had begun. The giant machine moved like a mountain given life. Every step cracked the ground, sending dust and broken stone into the air. Its shadow stretched across the ruins, swallowing the soldiers, the survivors, and even the broken city itself. Red lights burned deep in its chest, pulsing like a heartbeat, and with each pulse its cannons charged, glowing brighter, hungrier. The soldiers stared for a breath too long. Some froze. Some whispered prayers. None had ever faced a machine this size. Fire! Alric's command ripped through the comms. The streets exploded with human firepower. Rifles spat burning energy, rockets streaked into the air, and grenades arced through the smoke. The blasts tore chunks of armor from the giant, sending shards of metal crashing into the ground. But it did not fall. It did not even slow. The machine raised its arm. A blinding beam cut across the street. A building shattered, collapsing into fire and dust. Soldiers screamed, some vanishing under the rubble. The survivors huddled closer together, their glowing eyes wide with fear but empty of words. Juno ducked behind a wall, her heart hammering. The ground shook with every blast. She had fought enemy ships in orbit, but this was different. Here, there was no escape. The giant machine was not just an enemy, it was a nightmare that towered above them, a reminder that Earth belonged to someone else. Focus fire on the joints. Alric ordered. Bring it down, piece by piece. The soldiers obeyed. Rockets slammed into its legs, rattling the armor. Sniper shots pierced the gaps where plates overlapped. The giant staggered for the first time, its steps uneven. A cheer rose, but it was cut short when the machine slammed its massive fist into the street. The shockwave threw men and women into the air like toys, crushing walls and scattering fire. Through the chaos, Juno spotted the survivors again. They had not run. They stood still, their eyes glowing brighter now, staring at the giant as if drawn to it. One of them raised his hands, palms open, and for a moment the machine paused. Its cannons dimmed, its steps slowed. Juno blinked, not sure if she was seeing truth or madness. "Commander," she called over the comms. "The survivors, they're doing something." Alric's eyes snapped toward them. He saw it too. The survivors were connected somehow, their bodies trembling, their eyes burning with strange light. The giant's movements grew sluggish, as if invisible chains were wrapping around it. "Keep firing," Alric shouted. The soldiers poured everything into the weakened machine. Explosions tore through its chest, ripping armor away. Rockets struck its legs, making it stumble, crash into the side of a ruined tower. For the first time, the giant fell to one knee. But the survivors screamed. A sound not human, not alien, something in between. Their glowing eyes flared like fire, and then, as suddenly as it began, the control snapped. The giant machine roared back to life, its cannons burning brighter than ever. The nearest survivor collapsed to the ground, unmoving. Juno's blood ran cold. They're connected to it. They control it. Or it controls them. Alric's face hardened. He understood the truth. The survivors had been left alive for a reason. The aliens had twisted them into conduits, living tools bound to their machines. Prisoners not just in body, but in soul. The giant fired again, tearing through the ruins, crushing anything in its path. The soldiers scattered, their numbers thinning. Alric clenched his jaw. They could not win this fight in open streets. "Lure it toward the riverbed," he ordered. "We'll bury it there." The soldiers obeyed, retreating in controlled bursts. Rockets fired to draw its attention, grenades exploding to slow its advance. Step by step, they pulled the giant through the broken city, toward the scar of an old river long dried to dust. The survivors followed, stumbling, glowing, their eyes locked on the machine as if they could not escape its grip. Some whispered words too faint to hear, as if begging forgiveness. When they reached the riverbed, Alric gave the signal. Charges hidden by the scouts exploded, ripping the ground apart. The earth cracked open, collapsing into a pit. The giant staggered, its foot sinking into the broken stone. "Now!" Alric roared. Every soldier fired at once. Rockets, rifles, grenades, all aimed at the glowing chest. The giant struggled, its cannons blazing wildly, but its balance was gone. With one final roar of metal and fire, it collapsed into the pit, its body cracking, its red lights flickering out. Silence. The soldiers stood panting, weapons still raised. Smoke curled from the ruins, the air hot and sharp with the smell of burning metal. The giant lay still, its body broken, its power fading. A cheer rose from the survivors. But it was hollow, broken. Because the truth was clear, the survivors had been chained to the machine, their lives tied to its strength. 2 of them lay dead now, their bodies still glowing faintly. Alric stepped forward, his voice steady but heavy. This is what they have done to us. They twisted our people into weapons. They turned our blood into their chains. The soldiers listened in silence. The survivors stared back at him, their hollow eyes shining with something between fear and hope. For the first time, Alric knelt, his hand brushing the cracked soil of earth. His voice dropped, low enough that only those closest could hear. "We will free them," he said. "Every last one." But even as he spoke, a low rumble echoed through the ruins. From the horizon, more shapes moved, smaller than the giant, but countless, an army of machines marching forward. The battle for Earth had only just begun. The soldiers moved quickly through the ruins, dragging the wounded, gathering their dead. The battle with the giant machine had cost them much, and already the ground trembled again with the sound of more machines approaching. They had little time, but Alric refused to leave without answers. The survivors huddled together near the broken riverbed, their glowing eyes following every movement of the soldiers. Some swayed like sleepwalkers, their bodies weak, but their gaze was sharp, almost too sharp. They watched with the silence of people who had lived too long under chains. Alric approached them slowly, his rifle lowered but ready. He studied their faces, thin, pale, but undeniably human. 3,000 years of exile, and yet Earth had not forgotten its children. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice calm, steady. The oldest survivor, a man with hollow cheeks and trembling hands, stepped forward. His voice cracked like dry wood, but the words were clear. "We are what is left." The soldiers nearby froze, their eyes wide. A human voice, spoken in their own tongue, after so long. Alric nodded. "You were left here. Why? Why did they not destroy you?" The old man's glowing eyes shifted toward the broken giant machine lying in the pit. His face twisted with something between shame and pain. "Because we are bound to them. Our blood carries their chains. We keep their weapons alive. We are their power." Juno, standing close, felt her stomach turn. She remembered how the survivors had screamed during the fight, how the giant had weakened when their light grew stronger. It was true. They had been forced into something worse than slavery. They had been turned into living fuel. Another survivor, a young woman with hair like ash, spoke softly. "We are born with it. The glow. They change us when we are children. Some live long, some do not. But all are bound. The machines feed on us. Without us, they sleep." The soldiers shifted uneasily. The thought of their own people, twisted into the lifeblood of the enemy's army, made their hands shake with rage. Alric's jaw tightened. "How many of you remain?" The survivors looked at each other, eyes dimming. Finally, the old man whispered, "Thousands. Scattered in the cities. Taken when needed. Drained when not. We are their herd." Silence fell like a stone. Thousands. For centuries, the enemy had kept humanity alive only as tools, like cattle bred for war. Juno clenched her fists. "They should have killed us. Not left us like this." The young woman's eyes met hers. For the first time, something brighter flickered there. Hope. "No. Not killed. Kept. Because something in us they cannot make. Something they cannot take. That is why you are here." Her words hung heavy in the air. The soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. "What do you mean?" Alric asked. The woman touched her chest, over her glowing heart. "We dream of fire. Of ships in the sky. Of voices calling across the dark. We dreamed of you before you came. We knew you would return. The chains they gave us do not hold our souls. Not fully. Not forever. The survivors around her nodded, weak but certain. Their glowing eyes reflected the fire of something deeper, something even the aliens had not erased. Alric stared at them, the weight of her words pressing against his mind. Could it be true? Could these broken people, these prisoners, have carried the memory of freedom through generations of silence? Could their blood hold not just chains, but keys? Before he could ask more, the ground shook violently. A low, metallic rumble rolled across the ruins. The sound of countless machines, marching closer. The soldiers snapped to alert, weapons raised. Distant shapes appeared on the horizon, a tide of steel and fire moving through the ruins, advancing without pause. "Commander," the tactical officer said, his voice tense. "We don't have time. We need to fall back to the landing zone or we'll be buried here." Alric's eyes stayed on the survivors. "If we leave them, they will be taken again. Used again." The old man stepped forward, shaking his head. "You cannot save us all now. But we can help you." He raised his trembling hands. The glow in his eyes flared, brighter than before. Around him, the other survivors followed, their lights pulsing in unison. The broken giant machine in the pit twitched, sparks of energy running through its ruined body. The soldiers backed away, alarmed. "What are you doing?" Juno shouted. The old man's voice grew stronger. "We are bound to their weapons. But chains can be pulled both ways. If you free us, we can free you." The giant machine stirred, its red lights flickering back to life. But this time, it did not rise in anger. Its cannons turned away from the humans, toward the approaching tide of machines. The survivors collapsed to their knees, their bodies shaking, but their eyes burned like fire. Alric's breath caught. For the first time, he saw not just prisoners, but weapons of their own. The enemy had forged chains, but inside those chains burned a spark the aliens had never understood. The tide of machines drew closer, their numbers filling the horizon. The ground shook with their march. Alric raised his rifle, his voice sharp as steel. "Then fight with us. For Earth. For freedom." The survivors screamed, their glow burning brighter, the giant rising like a beast reborn. And as the enemy army closed in, the ruins of Earth lit up with fire. The ruins shook like thunder as the alien army marched forward. Rows upon rows of machines filled the horizon, their metal bodies glinting under the gray sky, their weapons glowing with deadly light. The ground trembled with each step, dust rising in waves, buildings crumbling under the weight of their advance. On the broken riverbed, humanity stood ready. Soldiers formed lines, weapons locked, eyes hard. Survivors knelt among them, their glowing eyes burning brighter than before, their thin hands trembling as they reached for power that was both gift and curse. And in the pit, the broken giant machine rose once more. Not as an enemy, but as an unwilling ally, its cannons turning toward its own kind. Alric stood at the front, rifle in hand, his voice steady. "This is the hour. For 3,000 years, we were exiles. Tonight, we take our first step home. We do not run. We do not break. We stand." The soldiers roared, their voices echoing through the ruins. For a heartbeat, even the survivors lifted their heads, fire shining in their hollow faces. The first wave of machines struck. Beams of energy cut through the streets, explosions tearing buildings apart. The soldiers fired back, rockets streaking, rifles burning, grenades blasting holes in the enemy lines. The survivors screamed, their glow rising in unison, and the captured giant unleashed its fury. Cannons roared, tearing through the front ranks of the alien army, scattering machines into shards. The battle became chaos. Fire and smoke swallowed the city. Drones screamed overhead, only to be torn down by sniper fire. Soldiers fell, crushed under collapsing walls or cut by beams, but still they fought. Step by bloody step, they held the line. Juno darted between ruins, her rifle glowing hot. She had no ship now, no sky to fly, but the ground beneath her feet was enough. She fired into the swarm, ducked under fire, dragged a wounded soldier into cover. For the first time in her life, she fought not for survival, but for home. The survivors unleashed their strange power, channeling their chains into weapons. Their eyes blazed, their voices rose in cries that shook the air, and enemy machines faltered, their bodies freezing mid-step, their weapons turning sluggish. Some even turned on each other, their programming twisted by the survivors' stolen control. But it came at a cost. One by one, the survivors collapsed, their bodies too weak to hold such power. Some died where they stood, their glow fading into darkness. Others shook violently, blood on their lips, but refused to stop. Alric saw it all. He carried their sacrifice in his heart like fire. He knew this battle would decide not only Earth, but what it meant to be human. The enemy pushed harder. New machines appeared, towering beasts with many legs, spitting fire across the ruins. Soldiers screamed as the beasts tore through their lines, their cannons cutting wide paths of death. Alric raised his voice over the comms. Focus on their cores. Aim for the glow. Break their hearts. The soldiers obeyed. Rockets struck the beasts in their glowing chests, ripping through their armor. Explosions shook the ruins as one by one the monsters fell, but each victory came with blood. Then the sky itself darkened. From the clouds above, a vast shadow descended. Larger than any platform, larger even than the cities below. It was a ship, an alien warship, its body black and endless, covered in glowing lines that pulsed with life. Its presence swallowed the battlefield in silence. Even the marching machines slowed, as if bowing to their master. The soldiers froze. Juno's breath caught in her throat. What is that? The survivors answered in whispers, their voices shaking. The warden. The one who guards the chains. The warship's lights flared, and a voice rolled across the battlefield. Not through speakers, not through air, but straight into the minds of every human who stood below. You return to claim what is not yours. You are fragments, forgotten. Earth is ours. You are nothing. The soldiers staggered, clutching their heads. Some fell to their knees. The voice was not just sound, it was pressure, crushing, heavy, endless. But the survivors screamed back. Their glow flared, brighter than fire, brighter than stars. They pushed against the voice, their chains straining, their bodies breaking. For the first time, the warden's words faltered. Alric raised his rifle, pointing it at the sky. His voice cut through the storm. We are humanity. This is our home. We are not nothing. The fleet above responded. From orbit, human ships opened fire, beams of light tearing through the clouds, missiles streaking down like falling stars. The alien warship shook under the storm. Its shields flared, its hull cracked. On the ground, the soldiers and survivors gave everything. Fire filled the ruins, machines fell, the giant unleashed its last breath of power. The earth shook as if the planet itself was waking. The warden's voice roared one last time, filled with rage and fear. And then, with a scream that echoed across the world, the massive warship broke apart, fire raining down from the sky. The battlefield fell silent. The surviving soldiers stood among ruins and ash. The survivors lay weak, their glow dim but not gone. And for the first time in 3,000 years, the sky above Earth was free of alien chains. Alric lowered his rifle. His voice was quiet, but every soldier heard it. We are home. But as the fires burned and the smoke rose, Juno looked toward the horizon. The ruins stretched far, the alien towers still standing, their strange lights still pulsing in the distance. The warship had fallen, but the war was not over. And in the silence of the ruined city, the survivors whispered words no one wanted to hear. The warden was not the master. The master has yet to wake.